Hi guys, Drea from Aloha Plant Life here, and today I wanted to talk to you guys and guide you through a propagation method that I don't really hear people talk about very often, and I'm not sure why, because it is ridiculously easy and one of the highest success rate propagation methods there is out there. And we are going to be using my string of bananas as an example today. She is touching the back of my couch now, and I don't really need her growing across my couch, so I am going to be soil layering her, and that is the technique that I'm going to be taking you through today. We're going to start here in the kitchen. We're going to do the prep work, and then I'm going to move you into the living room with me where she is to show you how we're actually going to do the propagation. Things you're going to need. You're going to need some sort of pot, 6-inch or smaller, although I personally think going any smaller than a 5-inch kind of complicates things with this type of propagation method. So we'll just say for simplicity purposes, a 5-inch or a 6-inch pot. You're going to need some soil, and you want to make sure it's appropriate for the type of plant that you're doing this with. Now there are some other things you might need, but I'll get to those here in a second. First, I just want to go ahead and get this soil into the pot and explain what we're going to do to get this pot ready. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to fill this pot up, but I'm not going to fill this pot all the way up because I really just don't need that much dirt at the moment for what we're doing. So I'm really only going to go about 3/4 max. And so once I get this filled up, I am going to go wet this down. You really just want to get it barely wet enough to the point where water is about to try to drip through those drainage holes, but you don't need a ton of water pouring through those drainage holes. And definitely make sure you're not packing down. I'm not even gonna tamp down the soil. You don't need to tamp anything down in this situation, but you do want to make sure you've got a nice level surface to the top of it. Once you've got enough dirt in there, just make sure you're smoothing it out nicely. So I've got about enough in here right now, so I'm going to go wet that down real quick. Okay, so I've got the soil moist now, but not super wet. I'm going to leave it on the tray because of where I'm going to be doing this at. I'm going to be leaving my mama plant where she is now. If you aren't in an ideal situation for this to work where your plant is currently living, by all means, move it somewhere where it's easier to do it. Just make sure that you're putting it in a similar lighting situation so that it's not, going into shock over the fact that you've moved it and now it suddenly stops growing at the rate it was or anything like that. So there are a few other things you're potentially going to need. I am going to need, I'm pretty sure, something to elevate this pot just a little bit for my purposes. And so I just grabbed one of my Tupperwares. So basically I'm just going to use this like a box to raise the pot up. So you might need something like that depending on your situation. You'll understand when we get into the living room. The other thing you might need is something to help pin the vines into place. So I have here just 2 bobby pins. I actually had used these previously on a different plant, just kind of opened them up a little bit. You can see there that that's just kind of been opened a bit, so that way I can stick it around the vine or over the vine and down into the soil to hold the vine into place. You could also take some paper clips and unfold them so that they're just kind of hooked like this and cut them in half and use that. You just need something that's going to help potentially secure that vine into place should you need it to do so, because you might not. I actually might not. We're going to find out right now though. Here we go. Okay guys, so we're here in my living room, and as you can see, I have my gorgeous, very, very long now string of bananas up here on the shelf above the couch, and you can see she is starting to trail onto the couch. So that's why I'm wanting to propagate her. So I also realized when I was setting up in here that Tupperware was not going to be enough extra height. So I went ahead and grabbed a cardboard box that I had, and I'm going to use that to elevate, as you can see, the pot so that I can get her vines into that pot at the level I want them to be. So on this plant, there are all these little kind of bumps coming off of where those bananas are. That is the start of a root. That's what I want to make sure that I'm getting in contact with the soil. So all we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and we're going to lift up these vines. We're going to move this box to underneath the vines. And then as you can see up in here, what I'm doing is I'm just going to gently layer whichever vines will actually come in and fit to sit onto the soil. And I want to make sure that they're not just like jumbled up like a ponytail or anything like that. You want to make sure they're kind of spread out, but it's okay if some are sort of overlapping because this plant is a very prolific rooter, I guess you would say. And so as with most succulents, what will happen is even if it's just a bit above the soil surface, those roots will start to grow through the air and reach down to the soil. Now, you could, if these vines looked like they were just going to stay there fine by themselves, leave it like that. I, however, know that Toby walks on the back of this couch, and so I am worried about potentially him knocking this and some of the vines getting pulled out of the dirt. So I'm actually going to use those bobby pins that I talked about to help secure these vines down. And because I have these vines kind of spaced out. I don't have to individually bobby pin down every single vine. You can take this, you can open it up a little bit more, and you can pin down multiple vines at the same time into that soil, and just gently. We don't want to like accidentally snap any vines or anything, but basically we're just trying to keep them there, so if this gets jarred, they're not going to pop up. So I'm going to proceed forward to adding in just enough bobby pins to get everything secured down, but I'm not going to make you have to sit here and watch me do all of that. Okay guys, so I've got all of the vines bobby pinned in there. It's pretty nice and level. There's not a lot of like overlapping vines or anything like that, so that's great. So basically this is gonna sit here like this, and I'm gonna keep an eye on the soil. I'm gonna make sure it's not getting too dry. I really just wanna make sure that the top layer stays moist. So if it looks dry, I'm not actually going to water it. I'm just going to use a spray bottle with regular old water in it and just mist it to get it damp again. That is what I'm gonna do for the first week. After the first week, if it's getting drier further down, then I might lightly water it, but not even to the point where it's gonna run throughout the drainage holes on the bottom. Because really we're just trying to keep it moist enough for those roots to want to go in there. Now, I'm not entirely certain how fast this one is going to go compared to some of my other vining plants that I've done this way, but just given how fast she's grown in general since I've had her, I'm pretty sure it's gonna root pretty quickly. I'm definitely not going to even try to remove this from the mother plant for at least 2 weeks. And it shouldn't take more than 4 weeks max before I could actually remove the plant. Now, what I'm gonna do to make sure it's rooted are 2 things. One, I'm gonna gently lift that pot up and I'm gonna look and see if anything's poking out of the bottom of the drainage holes, because sometimes roots just go straight down really fast and come out the bottom of the drainage hole. It's just a weird occurrence that happens sometimes. Go figure. And if I don't see any roots down there, then I'm going to gently tug and see if it feels like the vines are sticking. And I will probably have to carefully remove those bobby pins before I do that. Otherwise, it's just gonna be the bobby pin that's making it feel like it's stuck. But as soon as I feel like it actually has started to develop some roots there, then I'm gonna go ahead and cut it off right here at the top of the pot. And then I will probably cut this to, sometimes I refer to this as like, you gotta think about you're giving your plant a haircut, because I don't wanna just do a straight across cut, because then it's gonna look kind of funky. So I usually try to cut the outside vines a little bit shorter and then a little bit longer, so that it kind of tapers down to a point, just like when you're getting your hair cut. But you don't necessarily have to do that. It's just kind of my personal preference. But in the meantime, just gonna leave her here doing her thing. And right now though, I do want to take you back into the kitchen and I want to show you the results of another plant that I did this to. So let's go ahead and head back to the kitchen. Here is a finished example of soil layering. This is from my Dichondra Silver Falls plant that is hanging behind my couch in the living room. And I did just what you saw now. I put it down into the soil, pinned it down with some bobby pins and paper clips, and then I just left it there. And 12 days later, I went ahead and tugged gently on the plant. It felt like it was rooted, or starting to root, not fully rooted, obviously, but went ahead and said, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and cut it off. And then I waited. And so here's the thing, you guys, you're gonna have to remember, even though it's got some roots going on, it's not going to actually start putting out new growth right away, because it's putting all of its energy into fully rooting and getting as many roots going as it can. And once it has what it feels like is enough, and really it's just up to the individual plant what it thinks is enough, then you're gonna start to see that new growth coming in. So if you don't see, new vines or vines getting longer or anything for a while, don't be concerned. Wait it out. As long as everything's looking healthy and everything, you should be good. You can water it at that point, like after you've separated it. You can really start to water it mostly like a normal plant. You do want to make sure you're not letting it get too dried out right away, but always just look for signs of underwatering. As long as you're keeping it moist enough and everything, those roots are going to continue to develop. Once they develop, the growth will start and it will take off. Now, here's another thing, because you might be wondering about this. I cut it off back here. So now maybe you're wondering, well, is it only ever going to grow and vine on this side? Theoretically, it should not. I'm not going to say it couldn't happen, anything's possible, but it shouldn't. And I'll show you here what I mean. So on this one, you're typically not going to see it start to grow down from right where you cut it, because that's confusing, right? The plant's used to growing this direction. So odds are you're not going to see it just start new growth from right here coming this way. But what it will do is further up, it will start a branch. And that branch, because of gravity and weight, will start to grow down. So that's what's happened here. See if I can get up there well enough for you guys to see this. So you see, that's where it was cut, right there at the end of this one. And then up here is where this little branched piece from that cut piece has started to grow off. This was not there when I separated this vine from the mother. This has started to grow here in the last month. And so as you can see, it will keep growing down. And so now I'm gonna start to get trailing vines all the way around this pot, and it's just gonna get fuller and fuller and fuller. I mean, it doesn't get easier than that. The mother is helping the plant grow. You are not having to worry about whether the plant's gonna be able to do it on its own because it's got parental support. So thanks for joining me, you guys, and if you have enjoyed this video, please hit that like and or subscribe button down below. And if you are not following me on Facebook or Instagram, it's at Aloha Plant Life, and I look forward to seeing you guys again next time. Aloha!